Hey everybody, this is Luis from East End Technology, and today's topic is understanding the Cisco iOS command modes. Let's get started. The primary command modes in the Cisco iOS consist of something called user exec mode and privilege exec mode. Let's start with user exec mode. User exec mode has a limited number of basic monitoring commands. This is also known as view-only mode, and the most important characteristic of this mode is that it's going to end with the greater than sign. Next, we have something called privilege exec mode, and this enables access to higher configuration modes. Now, this is triggered with the enable command or the keyword. And what this means is if you're in user exec mode and you want to jump to privilege exec mode, you will execute the enable command in the prompt, and what's going to happen is it's going to switch from a greater than sign to a numeral sign. Now, let's go ahead and explore these commands and determine how to switch between the different primary command modes in a real Cisco iOS router. Let's take a look. Okay guys, so here we are in a Cisco router, and you can see that I am in user exec mode because the prompt ends in a greater than sign. Now, if I wanted to go up to the next mode, I would go ahead and I'd type in the enable command, and what's going to happen is, in my scenario, it requests for a password because it does require higher privileges. However, this is not the default out-of-the-box behavior. This is something that has to be configured additionally. But once I type in a password, you're going to see that the prompt is going to change. It changed from a greater than sign to a pound symbol. And if I wanted to go back, I could go ahead and simply type disable, and you'll see that the prompt goes back to its original state. Let's continue looking at the primary command modes. The next command mode that we're going to talk about is the global configuration mode. And the global configuration mode is also known as global config mode. The commands executed at this level affect the device as a whole, and this provides access to other more specific sub-configuration modes. Something very important to keep in mind when working in this mode is that the prompt is actually going to end in a config pound, and the config is going to be in between parentheses, as we can see here. Before we go on to the Cisco command line interface, I want to show you that there is actually a command mode hierarchy that you need to be aware of. There is a user exec mode that is represented by the host name followed by the greater than sign, that goes on to a privileged exec mode where we see a pound or numeral sign, and then we go to the global configuration mode. This is the mode where you can make system-wide changes and where you can access sub-configuration modes like the ones that I've illustrated here. For example, interface configuration mode, where you would make changes to the configuration of a particular interface. Now, you don't only have 3 sub-configuration modes, there are actually quite a few more, but this is for illustration purposes so that you get an idea of what the structure is actually like. You don't always have to go in order. In fact, depending on the privilege of your user, you could skip the user exec mode altogether and jump into privilege exec mode, but we'll learn more about that at a later time. It's important to mention that in every mode there are a set number of commands that you can execute. And by rule of thumb, you can only execute those commands in the mode that they correspond to. But there are ways to get around that. There is a keyword do, for example, that you could use in global configuration mode to execute commands that belong to the privilege exec mode, but usually you want to go ahead and stick to running the commands in the correct mode. I also want to go ahead and show you that to jump from one mode to another, there are arguments or commands that will let you do that. To go from user exec mode to privilege exec mode, you're going to use the enable command. To go to privilege exec mode to global configuration mode, you're going to use the configuration terminal. And once you're in global configuration mode, If, for example, you wanted to go into interface configuration mode, you could go ahead and run the interface command. Now, let's go ahead and explore these concepts in the command line interface so that we get a better understanding of how this all works. Okay guys, we are back at the Cisco command line interface. I am going to go ahead and start out in user exec mode as always, and the first thing that I'm going to do is type in enable followed by my password so that I can change to privilege exec mode. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to type in configure terminal and hit enter. Notice that the prompt is going to change from numeral to config in between parentheses and then numeral. This is what we know as the global configuration mode. And from here, I can make system-wide changes, or I could access other sub-configuration modes that are more advanced, like the configuration on an interface or the configuration for routing protocols. Now, that's not something that we're going to look into right now, but later on, I'll make sure I review that with you. Let me give you an example of what a system-wide configuration change may look like. Right now, we see that the device's name is router, but there is a command called hostname that lets me change the name of the device to anything that I want. For example, Luis. If I go ahead and hit enter, notice that the name of the device is going to change from router to Luis. I could always go ahead and change that back. And there are many more configuration changes that I can do here. But for now, this is the command line interface and the different modes that you need to be familiar with. Thank you very much for watching, and you have a great day.